Are you tired of lugging around heavy, bulky tree stands, whether you're using a climber or a hang-on, and would prefer to hunt lighter and more mobile? If you said yes, then you need to check out the Tethered Mantis Saddle and Predator platform. For me, this setup has done a couple things for me over the past year and a half. I've definitely been more mobile, lighter, and when you get into those situations where maybe the wind switches on you or whatever, and in years past you didn't want to pull all your gear just because you didn't want to move it, didn't want to make additional noise and things of that nature, this kind of solved all those problems for me. And I'm able to kind of tear down quickly, make a move if I need to make a move, and get set up without losing a whole lot of hunting time. The other thing I do a lot more of with this is actually I'll still hunt my way through, or just kind of go into an area where I'd like to check out, scout with all my stuff on my back. It's super light, so I don't really even notice it, and I hunt to where I'm going, or still hunt through to where I'm ultimately going to set up, which is a great benefit, has been a great benefit to me so far this year. If you're interested in all these things, then you need to head over to tetherednation.com, check out all their information related to saddle hunting, and release your inner tree ninja. First thing I do in the morning before a hunt is, of course, I have to have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there probably feel the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Skull Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and, of course, donates 10% of their profits to conservation organizations who are helping us to secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 kilo roasts of coffee, and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. All right, if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you guys know that I am good friends with all the guys over at Exodus. And I want to give you a quick heads up that you should be checking out some of their content if you haven't already. They have a podcast out called Trail Cam Radio, and they release new episodes every Tuesday. So the day before you listen to this one, you could be listening to that one as well. They've done some deep dives with some great guests. You'll recognize some of these names as Jeff Sturgis, Dan Enfalt, and the Hunting Public. And they also jump into and talk to some less-known hunters who consistently are getting it done many times on public land. If you prefer to watch podcasts, if you're looking for some video content, they have a YouTube channel as well, and that is packed, of course, with great videos and interviews. One of the most popular ones they did is a candid interview with John Eberhardt, and if you know anything about John, you always get the straight dope from him. And for specifically my PA listeners, they just recently posted a public land big woods interview with Steve Shirk, which I consumed, and it is pretty awesome. This dude's killing hammers and getting on giant deer in Pennsylvania, so it's absolutely a must listen. So if you're looking for more whitetail content, especially here during the course of the season, you just can't get enough, be sure to head over to their podcast, Trail Cam Radio, and their YouTube channel, Exodus Trail Cameras, and drop them a subscription or review and let them know that Truth from the Stand sent you. If you're also in the market for a trail camera, over the last 4 years, of course, Exodus has consistently showed they build quality trail cameras that flat out just work. Of course, the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are built to last. What is going on out there? Happy Wednesday to everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope some of you had a chance to wrap a tag around a whitetail. I, of course, at this point have not wrapped a tag. I will say that this past weekend's hunt was better than last weekend's hunt in getting shot at. So I always have that going for me. This past weekend, we're headed into prime time. This week of October usually is when things start to really ramp up. In the swamp last year is whenever I started actually getting some really good movement in the swamp, with some actually new bucks coming to the area to lay down some sign and open some scrapes and start trying to find some mates for the upcoming weeks. But the swamp this year has really been quiet overall, and that's been my theme for the year. Like I thought really this year that was going to be probably one of my go-to properties, based on the caliber of deer I had in there last year, but it just hasn't transpired. I mean, the movement has been nil. And what movement I have had has been young bucks. So nothing that I really want to spend any time chasing. So this season, my theme to this point for this season has really been about, I think the podcast that I just did that I released last week with Josh Profit was probably very appropriate, because this year it's really been a season of freelancing for me. I've not had really a locked plan, and since very, very early season, whenever I was trying to kill a couple of those deer that was on that one piece of public, and they managed to vanish and disappear, and then I spent a little bit of time trying to relocate them. Feel like I have, but it's really hard to get in to hunt that piece, given that some of the small game and waterfowl season has opened and stuff like that. Hunting that on weekends is nearly impossible based on where the sign and where I found him bedded, or where I found the one good deer bedded. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to approach that. So this past weekend, I ended up hunting over the primary scrape area where I had one really good encounter 2 weeks ago. And I wish I would have been able to get in a little bit more quickly, but I had some family obligations. The one weekend had the wedding that I know that I'd mentioned. So this was the first time I had a busy week at work last week. So this was the first time I was really able to get back in there, and it was on an iffy wind, and just ran into more pressure. There were some bird hunters that were about, and so forth. So it was really kind of a busted hunt. So that that property in general, I think what I'm learning this year is that some of these properties that I have could be pretty good, um, basically leading up to the opening of all small game. And then I think I'm going to have to adjust as I get into, the later part of October when all the smaller game seasons start to come in, because these properties are really kind of set up for that. They have some habitat areas that are kind of specifically built and made to, foster, whether it's, the re-implementation of woodcocks in the area, or whether they're hunting pheasant, or I know there's some decent turkey hunting around that area as well. I think I had a guy hunting behind me that I heard at one point that was trying to call in some birds. So it was just, I think what I learned this year is that the public that I've been kind of looking at and hunting, probably is pretty good for whitetails early in the year. So around here, opening mid-September and through like the very middle part of August or of October, I probably have about a month of what I would refer to as decent and relatively unpressured hunting. Because truth be told, it's like I really haven't seen any bow hunters out at all on any of these properties. So I feel like in the early part of the year, I have the place predominantly to myself. As it hits this part of the year, though, as the other seasons open up, it becomes a little bit more congested, and so I think that I need to start to look at some areas that maybe aren't as formidable, for small game hunters, turkey hunters and what have you, which I'll put on my to-do list for next year. So, the other part of this past weekend, what I realized and learned, as this seems like this year's been a learning year a lot for some of these properties, is that I don't really have very many properties or very many setups that are good for an east wind. I've got a lot, predominantly what I have had historically speaking, if I were to look at the historical wind data, and I've looked at it and just from years past and tracking the wind on days I'm going to hunt, I felt like I was getting a lot of west and southwest wind. And so a lot of the places that I was looking at and setting up, I was really looking at it through the lens of, needing to have a west or a southwest wind, or going to get a west or a southwest wind. And so the properties in the areas that I really kind of have mapped out are set up well for that. Well, what has kind of happened this year is that I've gotten some of those west winds, but I also have gotten more north wind, than I can probably remember in the past several Octobers, at least for me. So I've had some limited hunting opportunities whenever it comes to that particular wind direction. And then an east wind, this past weekend I had an east wind, and it really wasn't good it was really only good for one spot. And I don't know that this, it was good for that scrape setup, but it wasn't perfect. So I ended up hunting that scrape setup because it was one of those things where I thought, well, if it's almost wrong for me and almost right for the deer, maybe those two things kind of come together for me, and I get an opportunity. Who knows? The hunting pressure that was there, might have deterred that. Maybe it would have come to fruition, but it just wasn't in the cards. So for the evening, I was really kind of trying to decide where I was going to go. There's one property that my buddy Tom and I, Tom Titlow, scouted this past winter, and that's where we found this set of really good match sheds. Neither of us have got in. We refer to the spot as Area 51, and neither of us has really had a chance to get in there. Just the wind hasn't been great, and so it's been pretty much untouched. And we're running a cell camera in there, and so we've not really seen a lot of deer movement in an area that we thought we would. So we basically just left it alone until this past weekend. We finally started getting some daylight movement, and it looks like the buck that we found the sheds from is finally back and moving around. We had him, in the summer, and then he disappeared, and it seems like he's back in the area. And so I was potentially going to go out and put a hunt on that piece, but an east wind is just like, it couldn't be more wrong for that setup. It's a really, really, really small piece of property to where with an east wind, I'm basically going to blow every deer on that property out. There's really only one access point in. It's surrounded by private property, of which we don't have permission for access. So there's really only one way in and one way out, and so you have to have basically a perfect wind to not only to hunt it but to access it as well, which is pretty much a straight north or a straight south wind for the most part. You can probably get away with a little bit of west as well. But if it's too much west, I feel like the wind's going to be wrong for the deer, and so you're gonna get squadouche for movement or very, very limited movement. So that was out. So I was looking at the swamp, and I really haven't had any activity in there, and so I really, there wasn't anything that told me to get in there. And I think you've heard me mention in the past that the swamp is really two pieces. There's a chunk of swamp on the one side of the road, and then there's another chunk of swamp on the other side of the road, and I have access to both sides. And I scouted what I'll just refer to as the left side of the road. The left side, I guess it's the south, actually. The southern part of the swamp, I scouted it this past winter because I didn't get a chance to hunt it at all last year. And when I scouted it this past winter, like I didn't see anything that really told me that there were deer there, or that there had been any deer there to really speak of. There were some trails and stuff like that. I'm sure I could probably walk in and see some does and so forth, but the habitat that I was seeing and like the sign that I was seeing and stuff like that didn't tell me that it was going to be a place where I was going to find bucks necessarily. But given that I had a bad win for just about everywhere else, I was like, well, maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of go in and see if I might be able to put a hunt on in this particular spot. Had a decent win for it, and I was basically just going to be freelancing it. So I ended up walking in and putting on a freelance hunt, hiked in probably 3/4 of a mile-ish. And where I stopped my scout last winter and kind of turned around as I was shed hunting and scouting, I made the fatal error of not kind of walking the entire thing through. Because once I hit the point where I had stopped scouting last year and pushed past it, the habitat got awesome. And I ended up setting up I saw a fresh rub, or a bunch of fresh rubs there were still shavings on the ground. I found a fresh scrape that were all within, relatively close proximity to each other. And so I just decided when I found that, I was like, I'm stopping here and I'm going to set up. And it was actually on the edge of this cedar thicket that actually went out into like this, what I'll refer to as like a CRP field. It's not really a CRP field here in PA. It's just really a field that's left fallow and is just growing up and is nasty. And as I was trying to set up, I saw a buck and like 3 does immediately. And I ended up not seeing that buck come back, which was a bummer. I thought maybe he would kind of swing back around. But what I realized is I think that all the properties that I'm hunting are all kind of like relatively close together. And this area seems to be relatively untouched because it's the furthest away. I didn't see any human sign really to speak of. And the deer that I did see, I ended up seeing, I think, 5 more deer after I got set up and up in a tree. It's thick to the point that, of course, it was in my saddle, which made it easy to kind of do a scout, still hunt, and then, find a place to hang. But I was really only 2 sticks. And for me, with my 8-er, I was maybe 12 feet off the ground. And that was really all the higher I could get, but just based on how dense the cover was. So I feel like this could be a good area going forward, and I definitely plan to spend more time there. I think I'll probably focus some of my time when I get back from Iowa in this particular area, because I feel like there's a couple nice little, there's not a lot of topography change, but there's a lot of really good habitat change creating edges. And so my plan, I think, going forward when I get back from Iowa is to dive back in there and check out a couple other areas, because I still only made it through part because once I found hot sign, I set up on it. And I think what my goal will be to push back, there's probably another quarter mile or probably another half mile of land I can kind of get back into before I start hitting some private land. And there's a swamp section that's kind of at the front end of this property and at the very back end of the property. And so I want to get to the back end of that swamp property because I feel like it could be really good because it's the furthest from any access point. And I feel like it's going to, as I look at the satellite images online, it looks like it gets pretty thick, pretty nasty, and like there'd be, fewer and fewer people making the trek back to that. But that's been what I've been up to lately this past weekend as far as deer hunting. And of course, I'm primed for my Iowa trip. As you're listening to this, I'll be, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, I'll still be in PA. But if you're listening to this on Thursday, I will be on the road headed to Iowa, and then you will have podcasts coming from me and John when he's available for the next 2 weeks, just kind of recapping what we're doing each day. So with that, I have a cool show for you today. This is really just John and I catching up. We haven't had a chance to talk in a little while. He got back from Canada on a bear hunt. He killed a mammoth bear, and he just recently put out a video that he talks about that chronicles that trip. And we talk about my trip to Iowa and what he's been seeing in Iowa and just our preparation for the rut. So as always, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And as many times, I'm joined by my brother from the Midwest, Mr. Johnny, bear killing, filming, photogging, by God, Utah.
I added some titles.
I know, dude. It's like every time we talk, it's like, I think I say this almost every time. I try to give you a new title every time we do a podcast together. I feel like you're just a man with many talents and many interests and many jobs. And so I feel like
Jack of all trade, master of none.
Right. I feel like I'm the same, dude. It's like I have too many interests, I think, and I haven't ever focused on one entirely to where I got proficient at it to where I could say that I was a quote unquote professional.
Dude, that stuff, that's boring. You know what I mean? Like you gotta have a lot of irons in the fire.
That's right, man. Because if not, we were just talking before we got on air. Like every time I jump on Skype to ring you up, I'm like, I look at your picture on Skype and I'm like, damn, man, that dude looks young, man. That's a handsome looking devil right there. And then I see pictures of myself, and maybe it's the irons in the fire that have aged us. I mean, I think the way we live is like, if I don't have like on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 9.5 of stress, like most of it self-induced, then I'm not living. That's kind of how I roll.
I'm not living.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. It's, like we were talking about, one of our buddies. You start seeing them in photos and videos and you're like, good Lord, man, that guy needs a nap,
Right.
So I'm right there with you. I didn't have a single gray hair 2 years ago.
Right.
And then I got like, it was like, oh crap, I'll probably just tweeze those, or I'll just pluck that gray hair out of there. And then it was like, I woke up one day and I'm going, okay, there's too many. If I keep plucking, I won't have a beard left.
Right.
So it just all of a sudden hit me. And yeah, dude, I feel like an old man. Just been busy, life, stress. A lot of unneeded stress. I mean, if we could all just hunt every day, it'd be awesome, right?
Well, it's funny you say that because again, right before we jumped on, we were talking about just how much we look forward to this time of year, and like all year long, all we talk about is like, man, I can't wait till like the end of October, beginning of November, like get fired up for it. It's, the best time of the year. It's like Christmas for all of us. And then when it gets here, you just start grinding, and you're like, oh my God, this is gonna kill me. It's like you're looking for a reason some days to sleep in where you're like, is it raining a little bit outside? What's the wind doing? Is that wind direction good for me? It's like you kind of, but you always kind of press forward and trudge through. It's like, that's my plan right now is like, I started hunting like some mornings and stuff on some properties that I thought I had an opportunity on a couple deer. And I've dialed that back because I'm getting ready to come out to see you. By the time this drops, I'll actually be getting ready to drive out to see you. And so I'm kind of trying to bank my energy to get ready for like the all day sits of, 2 weeks of rut hunting in Iowa, which I'm immensely looking forward to.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Dude, man. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, man. I mean, I know we were sharing I wasn't doing any sharing, but you were sharing some pics of some deer that I might have an opportunity at. And, I have to say, I'm pretty excited, man. Like, it's, if I could jump in my truck right now and drive out, I would. No lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would just
just do it. Do it.
Just quit my job. Be like, I'm out of here, man. I'm going to Iowa. I actually joked with my boss today because he's pretty cool with like the whole hunting thing. He's pretty into it. He's actually, this is kind of funny. So he follows me on Instagram now and follows my stories. And so when I post something on Instagram in a story, he responds to every post that I make in a story with a piece of bow hunting deer knowledge that he's found by Googling. Like, and it's just like random stuff. It'll be like, when you are using your back tension release, you want to make sure that you remain or consistently keep your follow through. Like it'll be like some legit like advice that he's Googled somewhere and found and sends it to me. I think it's pretty funny that he spends time doing that, which is kind of funny.
It's like he's trying to connect with you.
Right. He's a good dude, man. It's funny.
Yeah.
He's he'll be the first to me. He's like, I know nothing about hunting, and now it's kind of like the running joke that and I think he actually made a pseudo Instagram page to kind of mock me. I haven't confirmed it yet. I'm trying to figure it out. But
it's funny.
Yeah, but he's a good dude. But yeah, man, I'm pumped, dude. But you've been doing a fair amount of hunting here, like prior to the season, dude. Like, so you had, for anyone that doesn't know, we talked about your first hunt in Canada, like at the beginning of the month or end of September or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you went back to Canada to try to even the score on your bear hunt, and boy, did you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude, it was amazing. Like, yeah, so kind of just a real quick recap for listeners. Yeah, I went to Ontario. I hunted for 7 days and came really close to getting a real nice bear. I was self-filming, and it was kind of like, you're trying to film, I'm trying to reach for my bow, and I couldn't do both. And it was at last light. So I was making adjustments to the camera and stuff. And then I was having to draw, let down, and that kind of stuff. And then the last few days, I just kept seeing a bunch of little bears. And, once you see a big bear, you don't want to shoot a little bear.
Right.
So I left and I left Ontario, and I was driving through Minnesota, and this operation, they called and they just said, hey, like, dude, we loved having you in camp. Why don't you come back? Your tag's good for a couple months. And I said, well, I got to get home. I gotta be in Alberta tomorrow. And then after that trip, I'm home for a couple days, and then I got to be in Kentucky. Was doing some photos for the first trip was photos for Ozonics. The second trip was photos for Whitetail Heaven Outfitters. And then I was like, and then I'm back home. And so they said, well, why don't you come then? And I looked at my calendar, and I literally had like a 4-day block that I could make it happen. So I got a hold of a mutual friend of ours, Taylor Early.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I need a camera guy. And he's like, well, I'll go with you. I'm like, are you being serious? I'm like, dude, you're going to have to get to my house at like 9 p.m. and we're driving through the night. And whenever we get there is when we're going to, go hang a set and start hunting. So he's like, yeah, I'm down. This sounds like an epic adventure,
Right.
So that's what we did. We left Iowa at 9 p.m. Drove through the night, and we hit some fog, and we had this idea that we were going to pull into a gas station and we were going to sleep for a couple hours.
Right.
I couldn't sleep. I tried for like 15, 20 minutes, and I'm like, screw it. We'll just drive slow. So we were driving slow, and then finally we ended up getting past this big lake. I guess it's like Lake Superior.
Right.
pretty big one.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty
once we got kind of back to the road and we weren't right next to the lake, then the fog cleared up a little bit, and we cruised on, and we made it to Ontario. It was like 2 p.m. I thought it was 1 p.m. And I told Taylor, I said, dude, I'm going to sleep for like 2 hours. I'm exhausted. Well, they're on Eastern time zone. So it was actually 2 p.m. So I ended up laying down for like 49 minutes. And imagine trying to take a nap before Christmas morning.
Yeah, exactly.
So I laid there for 49 minutes. I might have dozed off for 5 or 10, but alarm went off. I jumped up, took a shower, kind of woke up, pounded another Monster energy drink. That was like Monster number 22 for the trip so far.
Right.
And we went into a section of timber that we call public land, they call crown land.
Okay.
But the outfitters have. It's not that they have the tags. I mean, you buy your tag from Canada, but like to get permission, on that crown land. Each zone is like assigned to an outfitter. So it's kind of like you got to pay the piper, you know?
Right.
And this outfitter, like they're very, very knowledgeable about the bears, the timing of the bears and areas and stuff. But this is not an outfitter that hand feeds you and then hand holds you to your stand. They just say, okay, you know where the stand's at? Cool. Don't get eaten by a bear. Call me if you shoot one. We'll help you get it out.
Right.
Which I like, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyways, we went in and we hung a set. And we just went ahead and climbed, you know, as we hung the set, we just went ahead and sat it, you know, right away. Mm-hmm. And about maybe 2 hours after we got done hanging the set, I was like, bear, bear, bear. And at the corner of my eye, I noticed the video camera's not moving. And so the way this tree was positioned, and because of, we didn't want to have to cut a whole bunch of shooting lanes. So the way it worked out, Taylor was filming below me.
Okay.
So I'm trying to reach down below me without moving a lot, because I can see this bear like 30 yards away in the bush. And I'm like, the only thing I can touch is, you know, like on a ball cap, the little button on the top of a ball cap.
Yeah.
I'm like pushing it like it's a button.
And I'm trying to turn him on.
I'm like, Taylor. I was like, wake up, hit record button. Yeah. Hit it now. You know? So finally I see him kind of like twitch, you know, and he reaches up and punches the record button. But now he's looking for the bear. You know, he has no idea where the bear is. Right. So finally he picks up the bear, and as the bear's getting ready to come into the shooting lane, and it was a giant bear. I mean, you know what they say, like whenever you see a big buck, stop looking at the antlers and just look at the body, you know, forget about the antlers. And, my buddy Sam Gaylord that owns Old Barn Taxidermy, he always says, you know, shoot for the hide, don't shoot for the animal, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm like just studying the legs, the head, the neck, the shoulders, the back, the belly. I'm, you know, anything I can see, I'm studying it. And I'm like, yo, man, he's got a beautiful hide. And the way this bear, he was kind of quartered to me, and it was just too quartered that I felt comfortable. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm like, God, I need him to turn broadside. How's he going to, you know, he's got to turn broadside for me. I'm at full draw. And even if it's like when he goes to take his first step to walk away, I'm going to let it fly. And, you know, if you're standing there and you kind of rock on your hips, it like changes like the disposition, you know, like of your body. Yep. So all this bear did was just kind of like rock on his right leg hip, and it pushed his body out. So his legs never did change position, but what it did is it kind of forced him to open up a little bit for me. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm an inch to the right, I'm catching shoulder. If I'm an inch to the left, I'm hitting guts. I'm like, man, this is a shot of shots, John. You know what I mean? Moment of truth. You know, you got to take it. So I took it. 30 yards, we hear the death moan from the tree stand. Man. And you know, not all bears will do the death moan, but obviously if you hear a death moan, then you know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, you know, that bear's dead. Right. So I call the outfitter and I'm like, Bob, I was like, bring the Argo. And he's like, why? I'm like, because I just shot a big bear. And he's like, well, have you gotten down to go check it out yet? I'm like, no. He's like, well, quit being a little scaredy cat and get down there. I'm like, I know he's dead. I just was, first things first, I wanted to call you, get you guys en route, you know, but, so we got down and we did a short track, you know, we knew about where he was anyways, but, and got a full pass through. I was really happy with, it was the first big game animal that I had shot with G5's new striker, and was real happy with it. And like I said, got a full pass through. And like I said, 30 yards later, 35 yards later, we had a bear piled up. And then that's when things really became like a reality. Like, I mean, I was pumped up in the tree that I had just killed a bear, you know, and it was a good bear. In general. Yeah. Yeah. You know, first time I've ever been out of country with a passport to go hunting. Right. And so that was a cool thing. But then getting on the ground and then the true size of this bear. You know, there was no ground shrinkage on this guy. I was like, oh my God, this is a big bear. And I went to like lift his head. And sometimes you'll grab like a whitetail by the ear and
Mm-hmm.
kind of rotate their head over. I went to do that and his head didn't budge. I had to physically like put both hands underneath his head to turn his head to see the bear. And I'm like, you can't get his head inside a 5-gallon bucket. I'm like,
Jeez.
this is crazy. It took 5 of us to slide him into the back of the Argo, and half of this bear is still hanging out of the back of the Argo. And we get him back and we put him on the scale, and I can say that the bear was 515 pounds because that's what it said on the scale.
Right.
But the scale also said I was 189. So that's about 20 pounds shy for me. So
Right.
I don't know if it was the scale was off progressively, or just, it was -20 to start. But
Right.
nonetheless, he's a 535 to 550 bear.
Right. That's what I was going to say. He's a 530-pound to 550-pound bear.
Yep.
All
Just
day.
a giant.
Well, and like
giant
when you see
black.
the pictures of him too, man. I mean, like if you said he was 550 pounds, like you wouldn't go, like you wouldn't question it.
No,
You know
no.
what
And
I
that's
mean?
the other thing. And, one of my buddies was like, dude, you didn't even do like the typical sitting behind the bear photo,
Right.
I'm like, no, I actually have blood on my left thigh of my pants still from whenever I got down next to him, to take the kind of, the grip and grin. But,
Right.
um, yeah, it was friggin' surreal, dude. Like, it was just crazy. And then now we're waiting on the final beetle process. The beetles are done. He's been degreased, and we're waiting on the whitening and stuff so we can get him officially scored. Um, you know, in all honesty, like, I could completely care less about what his skull ends up being. But when we were in Canada, they were taking a lot of green measurement scores, of his skull, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's eyes were getting big, and I see everybody pulling their phones out, and everybody's Googling like North American Boone Crockett black bears, records.
Right.
Um, we know that he's going to probably go in like the top 3, top 5 in Canada,
Wow.
on Ontario all time with a bow,
Right.
and more than likely like top 10 in Canada with a bow.
Wow. That's crazy,
Uh,
man.
yeah, it's pretty nuts. And I'm like, well, that's just the cherry on top,
Right. Right.
So super crazy. We cape him out. We get my bear meat. We get everything in the freezer, and we can't just turn around and leave a couple hours later because we need that hide to set and freeze and everything else, for the trip
Right.
back. So we ended up staying the whole next day, that remainder of that day, and just kind of goofed off around town, went and did a little sightseeing and whatnot.
Right.
And then of course we had to go back and tear down the tree stand set, and everything. But then we got up early in the morning and drove straight through. So driveway to driveway, it was exactly 72 hours,
Wow.
which is just nuts.
That's getting it done there, dude. So whenever you hit the ground, man, and you were getting ready to walk up on him, or when you got to a
Uh-huh.
point to where you could see him, did you just like completely come unglued?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had my first initial like adrenaline dump in the tree, and I was like physically shaking.
Right. Right.
Then when I got on the ground, any whitetail hunter can relate to this. I got on the ground and I'm like, okay, I heard the death moan. I know it was a good shot. I got a completely blood soaked pass through, but I'm not going to get excited until I put hands on him.
Right. Well,
So
and you've had a couple like the past like year or two with just like whitetails. You've had a couple like moments that would make you a little gun shy too. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
reasonable to kind of have that trepidation of like, you know what, not counting my chickens till they're hatched.
yeah.
I've played this game before.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had a whitetail that I hit a little high. He really jumped the string, and I ended up hitting him just a tick high, and did not recover that buck. And then November 8th here in Iowa, I had a shot on a buck that I would take, if somebody said you can only have one shot the rest of your life, and that's the shot, I would be okay with that.
Right.
I put it was a money shot, should have been a money shot on a whitetail, and I didn't recover that buck. And it was just, devastated. I mean, if you punch one back or you shoot one low or high or whatever, like you can at least say, okay, my shot placement was off. But like when your shot placement's on and you don't have a recovery, man, I mean, that kind of haunts you. Every time you come to full draw, you're like, I did everything right before and it didn't work. Like, what's going to happen this time? And, so yeah, it was, once I walked up on him and located him, I went from like, if 0 is devastated and 70 is like top of the world, adrenaline shaking, like stoked. And then 100 is the other side of that bell curve.
Right.
You're like too happy to be happy.
Right.
And it was like almost emotional.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, like I'm a wreck right now. And I told Taylor, I said, I kind of gave him the, like, don't record this because, I was about to lose it. This has been a rough year, man. The stuff that I had go on this year. And, it was kind of like, wow, something really, really awesome just happened. So super cool. The bears at Old Barn waiting to start the taxidermy side on that. We're going to do a life-size mount on him. And
that's cool, man.
It's nuts.
It's nuts, dude. Well, I mean, I remember whenever I talked to you like shortly after that, I don't remember if it was like the next, like when you got back from Canada or when it was, but it was, pretty soon after that. And like, I couldn't be happier for you. And it's like, I don't know that I know a more deserving person, especially just as you mentioned, like all the, BS that you had to go through and put up with this past year, not just, just hunting and personal stuff. It's just like, it's been, it's not been a fun time, and so I'm just glad that you were able to have that moment, man. It's like I was super stoked for it. The only bummer was I wish I would have been able to be there with you to throw a couple back and help throw that thing on the Argo.
We could have used the extra hand. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
It took, like I said, it took 5 of us a good 10 minutes. And we were breaking out like, okay, so the triangulation of the weight, if one person lifts here and we have another person pushing here, I mean, it was methodical.
Right.
5 guys was really pushing it to get this thing in there. And I mean, I don't think that I'm a weak guy by any means. And it's all I wanted. Like I told the guys, I said, guys, I can't give you anything more. I'm giving you all I got.
Right.
So we might just have to cube this thing up and pack him out of here because I don't know that we're going to get him out of here whole.
Right. It's like they needed to bust out on some of that Canadian strength, dude.
Oh yeah. No, they were bushwhacking. That's for sure. But
right. Nice.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then, we got back and, settled for a couple of days. And then I was kind of back on the road again, back doing a few more photo shoots. I'm really just now kind of settling into whitetails. I've had a chance to get in the stand just a couple of days now.
Right. Yeah, I know, man. It's like the whole beginning part of the season. I mean, you've been basically traveling, And, well, I think there might be some benefit or unintended benefit to that. I think one, you do a good job of this anyway, but, this forced you to do a good job of it, but you keep a lot of your places clean, right? And not going in like, cause I know that there was a cold front that came through, right? And like when you get those small weather changes, like in, early October or whatever, you always want to get out and hunt, but are they the best weather changes, to go hunt? Like, probably not. Like, I don't know. I think I'm of the belief that, I'm curious your thoughts of this, but all cold fronts aren't created equal. You know what I mean? It's like, in my opinion, it's like you get a nice cold front at the beginning of October. It's like, yeah, sure, those are nice and all, but like you might be dipping from like, the normal temp of like 67 to like, like 60 or 58 or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is nice, but it's not incredible. But like you get that same 10-degree temp drop at the end of October or like this week or next. Right. And now you're going from like 58 to like 49. Like now you're talking.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
it was funny because I had a shoot that I booked, a month or two ago, and it was like October 3rd and 4th. And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
early October, it's warm as heck. Like, yeah, that's fine. And we had that October 3rd and 4th was the first big cold front of the season. And I
Yep.
thought, dang it. And a lot of good bucks went down, you know?
Right.
And then I had a Kentucky trip for Whitetail Heaven again, October 10th through the 14th.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, you know, it's middle of October. Like, I don't mind missing 4 days to go work, you know.
Right.
And the whole time I was there, another cold front happened in Iowa, and more big bucks went down. I'm like, dang it, you know,
Right.
literally the 6 days of the season so far that we've had cold fronts, I've been out of town. But yeah, you're right. It has forced me to kind of stay off of my properties. I would like to be a little more on the up and up with my trail cams and know what inventory and what's, you know, hopefully there's some bucks that shed velvet that have moved into some of my spots. But
Right.
I mean, I really haven't had a chance to check it other than the public piece I checked, you know, like 3 days ago.
Yep.
So I'm 3 days fresh on intel there on public, but my lease, and there's another property that I've got access to. I don't know how much I'll hunt it this year, but I guess I have access to it. It's not one of those locked in deals, but
Right.
I have no intel about what's going on there.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked with what you saw so far on public. How do you feel like what's your perspective on what you're seeing on public? I mean, you're an Iowa
Can,
resident, right? So
yeah,
it's a little different for me, right? Cuz I'm
yeah.
coming out with like a different set of expectations. Granted, I have plenty of time. Like I have 2 weeks out there with you. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm
Oh,
coming out for 5 days. So I can be choosy if I would like, but it's not
sure.
like I live there and I'm going to be there and I could hunt late season if I needed to try to go after something. So what's your kind of analysis on it?
Um, so I'm not overly thrilled with what I'm seeing public yet.
Right.
Um, which is good because I am seeing a lot of different deer in some different spots,
Hmm.
and using some different trails that normally they weren't using. Um, but I'm not seeing some of the bigger boys yet,
Right.
which is a good thing. You know, like this is the way it should be. I should see the 3 and 4 year olds, then the 4s and the 5s, and you know what I mean. Will
Right.
start coming in. So, I mean, I'm if I was my analysis for hunting it, if I was already hunting it, I'd be a little disappointed. But looking at what's coming up when you're going to be here,
Hmm.
dude, I'm excited for you because you know I'm like it's going to be good. Like you're going to see good stuff, and the corn's getting ready to come out, and
That
um,
always changes stuff, man. I mean, it's just like
yep,
one of those things where I have two pieces right now that I've been hunting this year well, one piece I hunted also last year, and this year there's corn next to it, where last year there was just like a fallow hayfield. And this year I've got, to this point, I have like 0 bucks on camera in that spot. Like,
yep,
like
yep,
nothing. You know what I mean? Like a couple
right,
scrubby, like young deer, like year and a half old deer or whatever, but nothing that I would pull my bow back on. And where last year it's like I was chocked full of like shooters for Pennsylvania status. And like one was like a shooter, whether you were, in Iowa, depending on who you are in Iowa, you know what I mean? Like he was, pushing 150 inches. Like he was a big deer, you know what I mean? Like
mm-hmm,
no
mm-hmm.
matter where you're hunting him. Um, but this year I got jack shit on that piece. So yeah, I'm stoked to come out, man. It's like I know there was one deer that you had a picture of in velvet that was looking pretty good. That was probably the biggest deer I think that you had on that camera, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that buck has been seen twice on the hoof.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good deer. He's like a clean mainframe 10 if I remember correctly.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Pushing probably
Yep.
150.
Yeah, I'd say he's 145, 150 as
Yeah.
a 4 year old.
Yeah. Dude,
Yep.
him with another year would be a smoker.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually, so that buck I have video footage of last year. I passed him last year. Chancey Walters was running a camera for me.
Nice.
And yeah, I had him at 15 yards, and I thought to myself then, I was like, he's got a cool frame. He's going to be a good, he's going to be a good buck.
What was he last year?
Probably 120, 125.
Yeah. He put some inches on then.
Yeah. I think he easily put on 20 inches, but
wow.
Yeah, I definitely know it was the same buck.
Wow.
And he was an 8 last year.
Right. Well, so he put on inches and points. That's pretty impressive.
Yep. So for all the people that say, "Oh, once an 8, always an 8,"
au contraire, mon frère.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome, dude. Well, I'm pretty stoked to come out, man. It's like I keep looking at. I was at a wedding this past weekend while everyone was dancing. I was on maps on my phone, like looking at Topo in Iowa. Like everyone's carrying the bride around and doing their dances and having drinks, and I'm in the corner by myself just reading Topo, like getting ready for my trip. But
yeah,
that's like the quintessential like whitetail freak right there.
Oh, for sure.
But
that's funny.
Yeah. Otherwise, man, like I'm pretty ready to go, dude. It's like I'm making a few last small tweaks to some gear and that I wanted to make before I made my way out. And I just was actually wrapping some of that up before you and I jumped on here. I've been shooting my bow every day, so I'm all dialed in there, staying dialed in and ready to roll. What's your game plan, man? I mean, you thinking? Are you well? So you have your lease. There's the public, and then the farm. I know we were talking about one farm. Is that the one you were referring to, or are we not talking about that one?
No. So yeah. So I've got the public section. There's a set out there right now. It's not a double set. There's a single set out there. Mm-hmm. And I have my lease. There's actually 3 sets on it, plus the big grizzly box blind, and there's a hay bale blind as well, technically. And then I have permission. Like I said, this is the one that I think I have permission on. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I have permission to hunt one. I've got a bunch of cameras on it right now, but I have zero intel. The landowner actually checked the trail cameras himself on his cell phone on an Android phone, and when he did, it formatted the cards to Android. And when he put the cards back in, he didn't format them on the camera, so it didn't record a single photo.
Oh man, that stinks.
Yeah, so they've been soaking now for about 4 days. Mm-hmm. So tomorrow I was actually thinking about going out there, around lunchtime, running out there real fast and doing a card pull out there just to see what's going on. But I did just recently, 4 days ago, pick up permission to hunt a new piece, about 10 miles east of me. And it's in a really, really good area. I know it's a good area because a lot of the big county poachers used to love to, hammer that area.
Right.
So I know there's big bucks over there. And I just got permission to hunt it. And there's been a really, really, really big buck that's been spotted over there. So I'm pretty jacked up about that. I did a card pull over there, and the very first day I put a camera out there at 4 p.m. and I did a card pull the next morning. I'm like, I'm just dying to see if anything came to this mock scrape that I started last night.
Right.
And there's if he's not 4, he's 5. Mm-hmm. Probably 100 mid 50 class, 10 out there.
Yep.
So, but supposedly he's the little buck.
That was the small deer. Yeah. When you sent me that and you were like, this is the small deer. I'm like, get the hell out of here, dude.
Yeah. That's supposed to be the little buck. And so the landowner's like, man, I really hope you see that big one that I've seen, earlier in the season. And I said, I don't know if I'll ever see that big buck, because if that one comes out, he might get shot himself. I mean,
Right.
that's a solid
Oh,
mature
dude,
buck
he's a
with a
great
sway
deer.
back and everything. I'm like,
It's a great deer.
yeah. I'm like, and I've said it before. I don't know if I'll ever shoot a 180 if a solid 150 walks out in front of me first.
100% all day.
Yeah.
It's like, like any one of those deer that you've seen on public that's, in the, from the 135 and up range, it comes by me. It's going to get an arrow flung at it.
Yeah.
That's like just that's the deal. I mean, I would like to sit here and say like, I'd like to shoot a 140. I mean, ideally I would like to shoot a 140-inch deer. That's kind of like my, if I had like what I want in my mind, that's probably what it would be. But, at the end of the day, it's like, I just want to shoot something that I wouldn't readily be able to shoot in most of the areas that I'm hunting in Pennsylvania. That's kind of that's the plan,
Right. Yeah.
So that mainframe 10 steps out like he's eating carbon all day. Like there will be no passing him. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I can promise you that. But I'm basically at this point, man, it's like, I'm getting ready to wash all my gear, to pack everything up. I've got my menu planned that I eat like a hobo. It's like I basically make nothing but crock pot food. That way I can just throw crap in the crock pot when I get back from hunting and heat it up. I got a sweet little wooden cabin I'm staying in for like the first week, and then crashing on your couch for a couple of days. And I got another sweet little cabin for a couple of days that I'm staying in. Mm-hmm. And you're more than welcome to come over and break bread with me in my stinky little wooden cabin.
That's awesome. Well, and I just thought of something. So my oldest, she's actually she'll be at school.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to crash on the couch. You'll actually have a bedroom.
Holy smokes, dude! I won't know how to act.
Yeah.
But the couch I slept on the last time I was out was pretty nice, man. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh yeah, it's pretty decent. Yeah, it's a solid couch.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I think that's a pretty good update, man. Is there anything else we didn't cover? We talked the bear hunt. We talked a little bit of the public land that we'll be hunting out in Iowa, and did a little catching up, man. I can't think of anything else at this point.
When do you think this podcast will post?
This will post on I can tell you, I got my phone here in front of me. Let me look at the calendar. I'll tell you the exact date that it's going to go out. It will go out today is October 22nd as we record this. It will go out on the 30th. It'll go out the day before I leave to come see you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So, yeah, it'll be a nice little prelude to our our hunt together. And then I guess this would be a good time to just kind of make mention that, whenever I do these trips, as I did last year, I started doing it last year. I started doing the rut log where I try to put out a podcast a day. It usually ends up falling off to like one every other day. And so I'm going to try to do that again this year since I'll be with John. John will be on most, if not all of them, depending on our hunt schedules and what time we're getting back and all that kind of stuff. But you can expect to get a bunch of Iowa rut hunting content coming your way over the course of the first 2 weeks of November. And then you have some video stuff coming out too. Why don't you make mention of that so folks know where to find that stuff?
Yeah. So, tomorrow, so that'll be the 23rd. I'm actually dropping the Big Bear episode, and that'll be on Arrowwild TV's YouTube, Carbon TV, and Facebook. I'm putting it out everywhere. And then also for our fellow Sitka gear fanatics, I am getting ready to post actually a Sitka Fanatic backpack review, and there's an element to that, a giveaway element to that. So I'm actually giving away a brand new Sitka Gear Fanatic pack.
Nice. Yeah. And I would advise everyone to get on that giveaway, because I've been using one, and it is pretty baller. I'm not going to lie. Super quiet.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Well, I think we can go ahead and shut this shit show down, and we'll resume said shit show in person in like a week and a half.
Sweet. I like it, man.
All right, brother. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating for the show. It'd be super Be super appreciative of that. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast while you're there as well. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.